You know, one of these days I will get it. And I'm not sure why I am so small here. Let's see here. That didn't really help it. But anyhow, welcome to Dentist in the Know. I'm Chad Duplantis. We are your backstage pass to all trends, politics, and everything that's new in dentistry. It's live. It's over a cocktail. We have a fantastic guest tonight. And I am here finally in full view with my bestie. Well, actually, I should say one of my besties, because one of our besties is in Germany, of all places. I mean, forget that bestie. But I am here with Dr. Jennifer Bell, and I'm going to go ahead and bring her up. How you doing, JB?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You know, one of these days when Jeff is out of town, I will actually get his script so that I can do it justice, because he's always so vivacious with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just don't do it justice. But you know what? Hey, they're not here to see me. They're here to see you. So.
I don't think so. Obviously, they're here to see our guest tonight. I know the real deal, but it's fine. And our intro will just be what our intro is going to be.
You know? It is. I mean, when Jeff's away, JB and Chad will play with whatever the hell they want to.
That's right. It's our show now.
Yeah. How has your week been?
Good.
That's all I got? Good?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's it.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, solidly good.
Well, then you know what? I'll tell you about my week.
You know what, though? I will say really quick. It's just always what happens right before you're about to go on vacation, right?
Oh, that's right. You'll have spring break next week, right?
Yeah. So I think everybody knows what that week looks like the week before you're supposed to go out of town.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So.
But all good. I will say I got great affirmation today. I used that new injection mold composite, flowable composite that Clinician's Choice put out recently. And I really wanted to try it because I really love that technique. I've been doing it for a while. I have a lot of different ways that I've been using it, but I've been playing around with that process. And it's so funny, Chad. Sometimes I won't even look at my own work. Like I did the case a week ago and I felt very iffy about it. Like I don't know, in the quagmire of it all, I just felt like it didn't go super great. And finally I just had to walk away. I guess we'll just say like a real artist does, you've kind of got tunnel vision at some point. You've been staring at it for too long. You're becoming hypercritical of yourself. And so I just left the room and I said, the occlusion's fine, polish it up. I'll see him in a week. I had to walk out. And I didn't even go in for the post-op photos today because I walked out of the room feeling not where I wanted to be. And I logged on and just checked the photos in their chart later. And I was like, damn, that actually turned out all right. I don't know why we get in our heads sometimes, like totally either the tunnel vision or my head was in some other space and I just wasn't feeling confident about a lot of stuff. And but man, it's real. Like it's really real.
You know, I want to tell you about my week, but I gotta kind of chime in on your story. First of all, just to our friends at Clinician's Choice, I am doing an injection molding case on Friday with their new technique, their new materials. And I had a great experience with Sprint Ray's design portal on designing the alternating teeth. And so we've got all that set up. I've got my templates all set up. But anyhow, like a couple weeks ago, I had this lady come in, and she's a pastor at a very high profile, she's a very high profile pastor at a large church here in the area. And so, you want everything to look good. And it's a single implant on tooth number 9. And like I was talking to her a long time ago about, hey, maybe a bridge is going to be a better aesthetic result. Well, anyhow, surgeon placed the implant perfectly. We had great gingival tissue. We get everything back. The crown, the anatomy, the contours, the emergence profile, everything's perfect. And I put it in there and I look at it and I'm like, shit, the color's off, And, this is a lady that's very particular about her teeth. My assistant looks at me and we both know the color's off. The color's just off. So we put it in there and I mean, without hesitation, I always tell the patients, I was like, look, I'm going to leave it in your mouth and I'm going to walk out of the room. I'm going to let you take a look at it. And then you're going to tell me what you think. And I'm going to tell you what I think. And so I leave the room and I come back in and I was like, all right, what do you think? And she goes, no. You go first. And she hasn't even talked. And I go, well, I'm going to be honest with you. It's going back to the lab. I go, I think it looks horrible. I go, I don't like the color. The value's too low. I said, I just am not crazy about it. And she looks at me. She goes, are you nuts? And I go, what do you mean? And she goes, I absolutely love it. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And she smiles and my assistant and I look at each other like, are we looking at the same thing we were just looking at like 3 minutes ago? And I'm like, okay. I'm like, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm being too critical. So I called in 2 more people from the office and I sent her outside of the office in daylight with them. And they're like, I don't know what your problem is, And I'm finding that it's happening a lot, but the more that you walk away from it, sometimes the better that it is. So I get what you're saying.
We become our own worst enemy. And the more educated you become and the more you watch other people who you admire, the more you feel like you're not ever living up to that. I had the exact same thing with a veneer the other day and I put it on and I was like, ew.
Yeah.
Ew. And then I like walked out of the room. I guess it all hydrated up. I don't know. But I came back and he's talking to me and I'm looking at it going, well, I'll be damn. Like that actually doesn't look so bad. Yeah. Yeah, you're walking out with this. Who am I to say? Anyway.
So let me tell you about my week.
Okay.
I don't even know how to describe this week, but this is a notes in the chart week. Okay. And what do I mean by that? It's like, it's one of those weeks where productivity's been okay.
Sure.
Profitability's been okay. But I have had to write so many extensive notes and it is unreal. Like on Monday, I got a patient from another dentist that's unhappy with the other dentist that, part of it is logical, part of it's not, but you've got to go in there and you've got to play mediator. And I had to do what I really don't like doing. I had to call the other dentist and kind of like talk things through. And in the end, it was great. And then the next day, I had another patient from an orthodontist. I had to call the orthodontist and talk that through. I had another patient come over whose dentist had retired. That's just in a world of hurt, not because of anything the other dentist had. And I had to talk that through. It's been a talking and writing week.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I had a webinar run through last night for a hands-on that I'm doing for Clinician's Choice. And I'm telling you, that is sometimes more stressful than the actual webinar itself. And I was at the office Monday from 6:30 until about 6 p.m. And then yesterday from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. And I'm tired.
You're worn out.
I'm worn out. So it's been one of those weeks. But you know what? I still love what I do. That's all that matters.
And our great Jeffy is in Cologne at
Cologne.
IDS, learning
Mhm.
all the things, seeing all the new stuff, all the new toys.
Yeah. Yeah. And hey, for those of you that don't know Jeff at a dental show is like a kid on his first time
Oh
at
yeah.
Disney World. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, hey guys, I just met with so and so. It's awesome. You guys are gonna die over this. Da 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 da. And then it's just like dot 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 at
Yeah.
the end of it, you know. And so we can't wait to hear from Jeff. We miss you, Jeff. We wish you were here. It's probably like 3 a.m. right now. I
Yeah.
hope you're I hope you're sleeping, but we know you too well. You might not be. So
So
anyhow,
true.
anywho, uh, should we get to news so we
Yeah. Do
don't
you
keep
want to
our
intro the show for tonight?
Yeah, I will. So tonight, we have a dentist. He once a dentist, always a dentist. But I'm gonna say in his former life, he was a dentist. He's always been a comedian. Dr. Jeffrey Gurian, and he is a fantastic human being. We're gonna have him on the show in a little bit. He's been here before. He's here again. But there have been a lot of changes in his professional life as far as dentistry is concerned, because dentistry's kind of resurfaced in a certain aspect where he was able to merge his two careers, his passion and his career, if you will. And so he's going to talk to us a little bit tonight. But before we get to Dr. Gurian, we have Dr. Jennifer Bell with the news.
We always have the news. For the news this week, to be fair, the federal government has a lot going on. So, focusing in specifically on dental things is not high priority, although there's a lot of discussion around Medicare benefits and dental benefits associated with that. Obviously, funding to states for Medicaid and Medicare. Lots of rumblings and things that are happening, but we're going to focus on 3 states that are doing some interesting things with dentistry that I think we should probably make some note on. We talked about last week, North Carolina starting to look at corporate ownership, and it's in one of the existing bills. A lot of kerfuffle this week on that particular law. We'll see where that goes. Illinois, I actually want to apologize. I should have brought this news story up way earlier than I am this evening, but I think it's interesting to note a few laws that went into effect in Illinois in 2025 that honestly, as a practicing dentist in the state of North Carolina, if they had gone into effect, would have drastically changed the way we practice. So I think it's really important to make sure that our fellow friends in Illinois know about a few of these changes. So there were a couple of different laws that were passed at the end of the year. One was that now insurance companies will be required to honor pre-authorization unless they can show an extenuating circumstance for why they can then go and deny that. Once a pre-authorization has been issued in the state of Illinois, it would be very difficult for them to go back on that. And I think that's awesome for patients and for doctors who are really trying to do their very best to give patients a fair price and to be very open about what things will cost, even though they can't really control the compensation of that. But another interesting law that went into place that I had no idea existed was the regulation around third party financing in dental practices. And we're all familiar with these different companies: Care Credit, HFD, Cherry, Sunbet. There's a ton of them on the market right now providing third party financing to our patients so they can be able to pursue procedures, dental procedures, more complex cases than maybe what their dental benefits would cover and what maybe they could just afford with cash. But now Illinois has a law in place that actually prohibits patients, dentists, and employees from filling out financial applications in the office. Dentists cannot provide electronic devices to complete those financial applications, and they're prohibited from advertising or promoting those third party services while in a patient treatment facility or in sensitive settings, which seems kind of vague. So it's interesting to see what Illinois will do with that, what dentists will be able to do moving forward. If they do offer third party financing, are they having to do that in a very different way? Does the patient now have to go in the parking lot in order to fill these things out? Anyway, kind of an interesting change because I know a lot of dentists rely on this particular thing, and a lot of companies that offer third-party financing have actually made it very easy for patients to fill it out in the office to complete that pre-authorization so that they can go ahead and secure the financing to be able to go ahead and book the appointment. So I don't know if other states are going to follow suit, but anytime you see a state taking up a charge like that, it does warrant discussion that other states may take a note. We've talked a lot about the interstate compact, the licensing compact that would open up opportunity for dentists to be able to move their licensure from state to state without having to go through an arduous process. As long as you're a part of the compact, then the process to move from state to state would be much easier. This was originally kind of a banner that folks were carrying for military spouses. As their spouse was moved from base to base or from assignment to assignment, that their spouses that were dentists would be able to acquire a necessary license in that state to be able to provide that service. So that was the origin story. I think it's sort of morphed into a few different things since then. But Arkansas is now the next state to join the compact. I think now that would put them up to 11, 10 total. Was what was required in order to make it an official compact. And now they have a few additional states to continue to move the momentum forward for this to be a more commonplace activity. The last thing of note, sweet Wisconsin, which made me quite famous last year when I talked about Marquette. This time, they are one of the newest states
Was it
offering.
Wisconsin or was it Michigan?
I don't know. I can't remember now. I have PTSD from that story. Wisconsin is going to be the newest state to offer dental health aid therapist training. So, as many of us have known about for a long time, this mid-level provider, which is somewhere between a dental hygienist and a fully licensed doctor, has come online, and we're seeing that more and more in other states, particularly states that have concern about access to care. So Wisconsin is now offering the training program in order for licensed dental hygienists to take the dental therapy training to move into doing other types of procedures. Most commonly, it is simple restorative and simple extractions. My joke has always been if I knew which ones those were, I could effectively avoid all the really hard ones that I didn't see coming. But anyway, Godspeed to those who have that foresight and that crystal ball that can predict the easy ones from the more challenging ones. But Wisconsin is now offering training. I think that's actually a big step in that, in the momentum of that program and with the dental and with this mid-level provider, because there are 10 or 11 states, I believe, currently that recognize the mid-level provider as a legal entity within their state. But only about 5 or 6 programs currently exist for training for those particular providers. So as you see more and more of these coming online, then you may see that uptick. And honestly, it's an interesting play because with the compression on dental hygiene and different economics within the dental practice market, will be really interesting to see how this all plays out. And again, would love that magic 8-ball to shake it and ask, how is this going to work out for each of the individual players within the dental space to see if we all come out, winners in the end, or if there are winners and losers. So with that, that's the news.
Always just so fascinating.
I tell you, lots of things going on all the time.
Hey,
Did you know that about the third-party financing, though? I thought that was really interesting.
No, I did not know that, and I do find that interesting as well. It's going to be.
I wonder if more states will, make it more difficult for us to be able to offer flexible payment options, more creative solutions to be able to pursue the care that they would like. I wonder if that's going to become more of a challenge.
With the cost of healthcare rising, I hope that we're still able to provide that.
Mm-hmm.
So, should I introduce our guest?
Oh, I love it. Yay.
All right. So I'm going to bring our guest up, and I actually have a story that I want him to start with, tonight. So I'm going to beg for that, but we'll see. But anyways, our guest is often referred to as a Renaissance man because he's involved in so many things. He's a dentist. He's a motivational speaker, but he's also a comedy writer, a performer, a director, an author, a producer, a radio personality. And it's not always in that order because his career has been very convoluted, to say the least. He spent 20 years. This is pretty funny. I don't know how I should read this. I don't know if I should read this as he spent 20 years in psychotherapy or on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy. But anyways, it was 20 years on the board for the Association of Spirituality and Psychotherapy, 12 years at NYU as a clinical professor in oral medicine, oral facial pain, and 25 years in practice with an emphasis on cosmetics. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I'm going to tell you that over the past few years, Dr. Jeffrey Gurian, who left dentistry and really pursued his comedy interest, kind of was brought back in by the lady on the left side of your screen. He was a keynote speaker at the Minneapolis Convention Center for the Academy of General Dentistry's annual conference last year. And the topic they gave him was how to survive a career in dentistry using positive thinking and humor. And I believe that he is also going to be the keynote speaker next week at the Oregon Dental Conference in Portland on the same topic. And the reason they mention humor is below, because he is probably the only doctor with a long-standing career in comedy. He knows and has worked with every big star in comedy for the last 20 years, from Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, to my boy Andrew Dice Clay, Jerry Lewis, newer stars like Bill Burr, Tracy Morgan, Nick Kroll, and John Mulaney, and had a documentary premiere about his life in the summer of 2020, which you can see on Vimeo. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our good friend, Dr. Jeffrey Gurian, the Renaissance man of dentistry and comedy. Good to see you, Jeffrey.
Great to see you guys. I'll tell you, with an introduction like that, I better be good.
You better be.
It's a lot of pressure. Definitely a lot of great to see you guys. And Jennifer, of course, thank you so much for the introductions. You inspired me to become a dental motivational speaker.
Well, when we had you on the show, what was it, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, it's crazy how time flies. Right?
I just thought
in New York.
I love interesting stories, and I love pathways that people take throughout their career. And each of us have our own unique story. And I think we don't give enough credit to one another about how impactful that story can be.
Sorry.
Sometimes you just need to hear somebody else validate it, to say other people need to hear your story and other people need to hear what you have to say, because especially right now with burnout being so high for doctors and just the general satisfaction in their work and in the professional space is not good. I think your message is really important, and we can't get it out enough. So
thank you. Thank you. Well, they say that as dentists, we have the highest rate of suicide and the highest rate of divorce. I did the divorce. I'm trying to put off the suicide for a while.
Tabled. It's tabled.
We appreciate that. We appreciate that.
Only another dentist knows what it's like to be a dentist. Yeah. I loved hearing the stories about your week. I relate so much. Oh God. How we judge ourselves, we're such perfectionists. That's how we're trained, to be perfectionists. We work in such a small area. To most of the world, an inch is a small amount of space. To us, that's 3 teeth.
That's so big.
We're working with millimeters all the time, and inside, and with people that are afraid of not because of things that happened to them as an adult, because of things that happened to them as a child.
Yeah.
Carrying those fears all these years. Because years ago, so many dentists worked on children that had no business working on children. You have to have the right personality to work on the right temperament to work with little children, especially little children. And years ago, I can still remember the sound of that old electric slow speed drill. Oh. You want to kill yourself.
Yeah. And the smell.
Yeah.
Like
burning smell.
When did you walk away from dentistry in total?
I never really walked away. After when I was at NYU, I was there for 12 years, and when I wrote this book with Chris Rock, that was when I left. Back around 10, 11 years ago. But I always stayed, connected because I loved the field so much, And then when Ahmed Ismail, the dean of Temple University, contacted me, it's such a crazy story. I was harassed in dental school. I was so looking forward to being a dentist. I wanted to be a dentist since I was 12 years old, and I thought I would be welcomed into the profession. And instead, it turned into a 4-year fraternity hazing. And they treated me so badly that from the day I graduated, I never went back. I have a picture of me in dental school, if you can see it. I was banned. I was banned from dental school for 3 weeks.
You look like the fifth member of the Beatles.
Yeah.
No, but look how short my hair was in the back. I had sideburns and I had a mustache, but my hair was very short. But to them, I was a radical. And there were two guys, the head of Crown and Bridge and the head of prosthetics, the two most important departments, were offended by my presence. And the head of Crown and Bridge had a Confederate flag in his office and a sign that said, "The South will rise again." And this
Where
guy
was this at NYU? Where was this?
At Temple.
Okay, so that's where you went to school. Okay, Temple.
Yeah, and the other guy, the head of prosthetics, could have won a contest for who had the shortest hair in the world. These two guys just hated me, and I was banned from clinic for 3 weeks. Now, in school, if you miss even a day or two, it's a problem. You have credits. You have to fulfill, certain credits. 3 weeks is insane. And I had an advisor. I'll never forget. I'm not going to say his name, but he took me out in the hall one day and he said, "I want you to know you're a disgrace to the profession and you should think of dropping out of school." That's something to tell a 22-year-old,
Right.
That's all I was. And they destroyed my self-confidence and my self-esteem till the day I graduated. They humiliated me on a daily basis. And so in 2019, when I left, I never went back. I never had anything to do with the school because it left me with such trauma. And my parents used to say, we'll understand if you want to drop out. And I said, I'll never let them get the best of me. This is my dream. I want to be a dentist, no matter what I have to go through. And I graduated at the top half of my class. I was number 54 out of 126. And so 2019, I get an email one day from the dean of Temple. And he said, "I'd like to come to New York and take you out to lunch." And I assumed that they were going to ask me for a donation because I never had anything to do with the school. And I was going to say no, but I write books about confronting uncomfortability, fighting fear, and I have to walk the walk. I can't just talk the talk, right? So I agreed to this luncheon, and he brought another dean with him. Now, he was not the dean when I went to school. He's a brand new dean, and they took me to this beautiful luncheon, and I started to tell him my story. I brought my pictures of my before and after pictures of my cosmetic work. I brought a film script that I wrote about my experience in dental school called "Almost Cut My Hair," which was after a song by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And I brought all this stuff to show him, and I thought to myself, this will be my opportunity for some closure. I'm going to tell him how poorly I was treated and how I was singled out. And I started to tell him my story, and he interrupted me, and he said, "I want you to know they were racist and anti-Semites, and I know your story." He said he had read about me on the internet. He didn't come for a donation. He came because he said he wanted to meet me. He said I was one of the most accomplished graduates of the school. And at the end of the meeting, he said to me, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I took a picture. I have a picture of me with these two deans, one on either side of me. And he became a very good friend of mine. He said we would never allow that in the school these days. He said a lot of people were affected, but he knew that I was treated the worst. And he had me give a series of lectures. Well, he wanted me to tell my story to the dental students of today because he said they think they have it rough. I want them to hear what you had to go through.
Yeah.
And like when we were being taught how to give local anesthetic, you learn on a patient. So I'm sitting in the clinic. I have the needle in the patient's gingiva. I never forget this. It was the upper left quadrant. I'm injecting, and an instructor comes by and he goes like this, put it in further, like that. He hit my arm. To this day, I mean, that would be considered assault. They would never get away with stuff like that today. But that's the way they treated me for 4 years. So I wound up doing a series of lectures at Temple he said to me, I want you to talk about changing frustration to enjoyable and hate to love. And then he hired me to do a comedy show for the faculty for the Christmas holidays. And he said to me, would you ever think that this would be possible? And I said, in a million years, I could never guess, because they tried to destroy me in dental school. You have to have very good self-esteem and self-confidence to be a good dentist. If you're filing down somebody's front teeth, you better have confidence in yourself, you know? And when you treat students that way, it's a horrible thing to do to people. It took me many years to get up the confidence to be who I became, you know, and I never want to forget that story. So I talk about that. I found that from my freshman year in college, not in college, in dental school, we had to carve things into chalk. Did you have to do that when you went to school? You had to
we didn't chalk. It was all wax.
Well, we had to carve shapes into this chalk block. And if you broke it, you would be out of school. And we had to put pins. Look at I still have this all these years. Because I never want to forget the sickness that I had to go through to become a dentist. And, you know, I had to put 6 pins in a cut-off molar that we had to embed in plaster in one of these little grinding things. I don't know. It was just such an amazing experience, but such a nice thing that this dean contacted me and that I went to meet with him. If I had turned him down, I would have never had that experience. And I'll tell you quickly to wrap that up. They treated me so badly that I was clenching and grinding my teeth. I never knew that I was doing that. I thought I had lockjaw. It turned me on to learning about TMJ, and that became my specialty at NYU. I wound up lecturing to the TMJ department about how to take away headaches using just the energy from your hands. Michael Gelb, who was the head of TMJ, he had me do a treatment on him because I'm a very big believer in the transfer of energy between people. And I've been involved in healing all my life. And that's how I wound up on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy. Because in 1999, I approached Dr. Henry Grayson, who was the founder of the National Institute of the Psychotherapies. And I told him, I said, look, I don't have your training, but if you're working with people who are emotionally ill, a lot of them are clenching and grinding their teeth, and they're getting headaches and neck pain and physical body pain, and you're not addressing it because that's not your training. And all dentists are really psychologists. You know that, right? We don't have the degree, but we're all psychologists. And so they accepted my work, and he brought me on the board, and I spent 20 years lecturing to psychologists on what symptoms to look for when you're treating people that are emotionally ill and depressed. If people wake up in the morning and their neck hurts, the last person in the world they would ever tell would be their dentist, right? Mm-hmm. Why would you ever tell your dentist that your neck hurts? It wouldn't occur to you. So if that's not part of your medical history, it's going undiagnosed. And that's a very long answer to your question. And I'm sorry to take up so much time.
No, it was good.
You can take up as much time as you want, but there's a couple of things that came out of that I want to point to. The first is that you said that you weren't going to give them money, but I think what you gave back to the school is so much more valuable than money, you know. And so you ended up giving back to your school in ways that you had learned based upon the experiences that you had there. That's really pretty incredible. But I also learned that not only are you the Renaissance man, but you're also the shrink next door.
Well, you know what? I really believe that we all are. People would rather switch physicians than dentists. Yeah. Once somebody finds a dentist that they trust, they stay with them forever. My goal was always to put out positive energy to the universe, and especially with local anesthetic. I worked very hard to develop techniques for painless anesthetic, for painless injections.
Yep.
I went to a lecture once, I don't remember where, I guess from the Bronx County Dental Society, where a doctor actually said, never use topical on children. It's good for them to feel a little pain. And I was incensed, and I stood up and I said, when you go to the dentist, do you want to feel a little pain? You know, I used to leave the topical in for 5 minutes. If you don't have a couple of extra minutes to make people comfortable, you know, it never made sense to me. I would work on little children, and I would show them the needle that it's like a water gun, and I would squirt it. And I would leave the topical in while I was showing it to them. And by the time I gave them the anesthetic, they didn't feel anything. All it takes is an extra couple of minutes to make a person comfortable. If you hurt somebody with the anesthetic, they're nervous for the rest of the visit because they're expecting more pain. If a person says to you, are you going to give me an injection? And I say, I already did. You've got a patient for life. You know, people used to come to me before they went to the oral surgeon, and they'd say, could I come to you for the injection first before I go to the surgeon? And I'd be like, sure, I don't mind. Of course, come in, you know, because that's what you're supposed to do.
It's your craft. It's what you're good at.
Craft.
Yeah.
It's an art and a science. And as dentists, we have a very unique opportunity. We're cradling people's heads in our hands. We're working inside their mouth. It's such an intimate field. It's an artistic field and a very intimate field. And that's where I used energy work, you know. When I was at NYU, Dr. Joan Phelan was the head of oral medicine. And she called me into her office one day. So I thought I was getting fired because I always think I did something wrong.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, you were kind of conditioned that way at Temple.
Exactly. Yeah. If they called you doctor in dental school, you know we were in trouble. If they said, okay, doctor, come up to the board, you know you were in trouble, right? If they called you doctor. So she calls me to her office, and I was ready for the worst. And she said to me, Jeffrey, I think we're underutilizing you. I see what you're doing in the clinic, and I think you should be teaching this. We'll try to raise a budget so you can teach this class about energy work to take away the physical pain from bruxism, intraorally and extraorally. You know, and in my handouts, like at AGD, I included shiatsu points to press to take away headaches. I truly think that dentists should be treating headaches because in this country alone, it's an old number, but they said that more than 150 million people in this country alone suffer with what they think are migraine headaches that are really musculoskeletal headaches that are coming from TMJ, from overusing the muscles of your jaw. And especially the last 4 years, so many dentists report people with cracked teeth and broken fillings and stuff, and people are grinding like crazy, and so many of them don't know they do it. I used to keep examples. I would take models of people's teeth that were so worn down, and they would insist they weren't grinding their teeth. A lot of people, they don't realize they're doing it. The definition of a habit is that it's involuntary. A lot of people really don't know, and I'd have to prove to them that they were doing it. And I loved making soft night guards. That's what I did, you know. I said soft night guards for the lower teeth. So many dentists like hard night guards for the upper teeth. But I've tried them and I've worn them. And I said when I lectured at Temple, I said, if I'm saying something that doesn't go with your teaching, please tell me, because I don't want to say things to the dental students that, you know, that go against what you're teaching. And he said, no, I'm happy that you're saying that. Your experience is very valid. Because I've been wearing one for probably 30 years. But if I hadn't been treated so badly, I wouldn't have had an interest in TMJ, and that became my focus. And that's what allowed me to write my first happiness book, Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness, was about letting go of the pains of the past, because the things that they did to me and said to me stayed inside me. Anytime someone hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you, from the time we're children, we keep that inside of us in our heart chakra. You know, not to be too metaphysical, but I believe in energy centers. It's an ancient Sanskrit word that means wheels of energy, and there are 7 of them in the body. And every time someone hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you or hurts you in some way, it stays lodged inside of us, and it affects your self-esteem and your self-confidence, and it affects every decision that you make in your life, because every time you're called upon to make a decision, you think about what to do. And if your thoughts are faulty, your decisions are not going to work out for you. So in my case, I stuttered very badly from the time I was 6 or 7 through my 20s and beyond, even into my 30s. And as you can see, not only don't I stutter anymore, but you can't even shut me up. I talk a lot. I always have a lot to say, but I learned that I had to change my thinking. I was holding thoughts that were not valid for me. And my dental school experience took me on that trip. I had to let go of that negativity that they placed on me, telling me that I was a disgrace to my profession because I had a mustache. You know, it's a very sick thing to do to people. And to have the dean give me that kind of closure was very, very special. So I want to hear what you...
Was comedy the outlet for you? I mean, and I bring this up for two reasons. One, to highlight kind of this parallel life that you were living, as I kind of understand it. But two, I see a lot of dentists, you know, number one, they're creative beings by training. Yes, we are very type A. We hold ourselves to a very high standard, both from our training, but I also think there's some innate perfectionism that sort of gravitates people towards this profession. But a lot of them are incredibly creative, either physically artistic, which makes them really great dentists, or just mentally very creative and artistic. And so a lot of times they end up pursuing these kind of parallel lives of passion where dentistry is their profession. They love it. They love taking care of the people. But there's this other passion or drive that they find that also feeds a part of their soul that needs nurturing. Was comedy that for you?
The year I decided I wanted to be a dentist, when I was 12 years old, which is a strange thing when I think back about it, I was already writing comedy. In my junior year of dental school, I got to meet Woody Allen, who was my comedic idol. I was sending him notes backstage on my dental school cards as if I knew him. I had no money. You know, I'm living in North Philadelphia in a gang neighborhood. It was so dangerous. Gangs were afraid to go there. They had to bring another gang with them just to feel safe. It was ridiculous.
It was gang on gang?
It was gang on gang, yeah. And I stole it's funny, I stole a human head to from the gross anatomy lab. I had no friends. I had to study for a gross anatomy practical. And I put a half it wasn't even a whole head, it was a mid-sagittal section of a head. And I put it in a shopping bag. My life was so sick. I dissected the head on one end of the table and ate on the other end.
Yeah,
you know? It was so bad. So in my junior year, I meet Woody Allen, and I was sending him these notes. On the rare times that I could come to New York, I'd go to the theater. He was in this play called Play It Again, Sam, with Tony Roberts. And I would leave a note on the back of my dental school card. Woody, it's Jeffrey. I haven't seen you in a long time, and I'll be coming to the show. And I just kept leaving these cards. And one night, I finally saved up enough money to get tickets. And I brought this girl who hated me. But we had just broken up. She was the only girl I knew, a pretty girl. I knew if I meet a big star, I have to show I'm sane. So you either wear a tie or you bring a pretty girl. I didn't have a tie. So I just was the only pretty girl I knew. So I begged her to please come with me, and she agreed because she knew it was my dream to meet Woody Allen. So he sits with me, and I'm saying, and I sent my last card. I said, Woody, I'm here, and I'll be back during intermission. And so I didn't even know you wait till the end of the show. I was a kid. I didn't know anything. So during intermission, I almost chickened out. She goes, you can't chicken out because I came with you. And I go and I meet Woody, and it's in the middle of the show. He goes, can you come back tomorrow night? And I'm like, no, I'm much too busy. I'm like, of course I'll come back tomorrow night. And I'm driving my father's car. I beg the same girl. She comes with me again. Woody sits with me for like an hour, and he reads all my material. I didn't even have scripts. I had scraps of paper. And he said to me, your comedy is very visual, and you should really think of making films out of it, which I did. So I'm a junior in dental school. A few years later, I made those films. It was called the Men Who series, a series of absurd films like men who take a pitchfork to the movies, men who enjoy Latin dancing with tools. I had a guy do the tango with a wrench. That was unbelievable. And I was doing these false news stories, like several men were arrested for smearing cream cheese on the ankles of elderly women who wore their stockings rolled down like bagels. You ever see the old women with the stockings around their ankle? It looked like bagels to me. So I got my dear grandmother, who had a great sense of humor. I was so sick. She actually let me put cream cheese on her ankles.
Yes, that's
And
what grandmothers do.
And she made believe she had a Jewish accent. And she said, you know, in the Jewish religion, we have two kind of stockings, one for milk and one for meat. She goes, and this crazy man, he smeared cream cheese on my meat stockings and I can't get it off. So, and I filmed that, and that's what I brought to Saturday Night Live. And that's how I got started doing comedy. From Alan Zweibel, I snuck into Saturday Night Live. I was driving a Mandarin orange car.
I was going to ask you to tell this story, so please carry on.
Okay.
But we got to start with the pimp.
Yeah. Okay. So I had just started making some money from dentistry, and I was going to buy my own car. And I'm like, what car would be appropriate for a guy like me? So I met this pimp from Maryland. His name was Benny, and he had a gold Cadillac Eldorado. And the Eldorado had a clear bubble over the driver's seat and a clear bubble over the passenger seat. I was very impressed with his lifestyle. I said, this is who I need to be. So I went to a place in the Bronx called Dick Gidron Cadillac. And they had one Cadillac left. It was a Mandarin orange Eldorado that had been made for one of the Isley brothers. And this car, it appears in the documentary that they made about me. So you can actually look this up and see it for yourself. So I bought this car and I put a Rolls Royce grill on it because that's what the pimps did. But my car had DDS plates. So wherever I went, police would follow me and hookers would check out the car. Nobody knew what the story was. And I'm driving this car and I'm wearing all leather clothes. And people think I'm in the music business, but I'm a dentist, right? And my wife is like, we're Jewish and we live in Scarsdale. What
are we doing?
Why am I driving an orange Cadillac? Nobody got it but me. It was the most amazing car. That's the car that I drove up to Saturday Night Live. And in those days, you could drive right up to the building at 30 Rock. There was no terrorism in those days. It was a much safer world. And I had a CB radio in the shape of a telephone. There was no cell phones yet in those days. So I made believe I'm on the phone. So I pull up in front of 30 Rock. And I throw the doorman a couple of bucks. And I said, watch my car. Lorne Michaels is expecting me. Lorne Michaels had never heard of me. He was the producer of Saturday Night Live. And I go in the building and I sneak past the security guard. I get in the elevator, go up to Saturday Night Live. Alan Zweibel, who was a young writer at the time, one of the head writers on the show, was playing handball on the wall with Neil Levy, who was Lorne Michaels' cousin. And I stop him and I introduce myself and I tell him I have these films. He looks at the films and he did the kindest thing for me. He didn't just give me the phone number. He called his manager on my behalf and asked him to meet with me. And his manager was a man named David Jonas, who was handling Freddie Prinze at the time. If you remember the late Freddie Prinze, he had a show called Chico and the Man. And he met with me in his office on 57th Street. And for the first year, he tried to talk me out of it. He goes, you're a doctor. What do you need this for? What are you, crazy? The show business is not for you. But I wouldn't take no for an answer. And from him, I started writing for comedians, all the guys who did the show Catskills on Broadway. And that's how I got to meet Rodney Dangerfield. And then I started writing for Rodney. And he was doing my stuff on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And that's how I became what they call an industry name. And then that snowballed into me writing for Joan Rivers and Dice Clay. I'm one of the few people that ever wrote for Dice. And he says it on the radio, so he doesn't mind me saying that. And I was the main writer for the Friars Roast for 12 years. So I got to work with Jerry Lewis and Milton Berle. If you remember the name Milton Berle,
yep,
he was my sponsor in the Friars Club, Mr. Television. So I got to work with all the legends from yesterday, you know, Sid Caesar and Henny Youngman and all those people and all the young guys from today. You know, I'm the first guy to be pranked with Too Much Tuna on Comedy Central by Nick Kroll and John Mulaney. And I got to show you this. Oh, I put it when they did their Broadway show. Do you know who Curtis Sliwa is in New York? He started the Guardian Angels. Mm-hmm. They're crime fighters. They ride the subways. They wear red jackets and red berets. And he's running for mayor again of New York City. So Nick Kroll and John Mulaney had a show on Broadway called the Oh Hello Show. And during the show, they prank people with a very big tuna sandwich. They think that's hilarious. I'm the very first person that was pranked with too much tuna. They made me this jacket, an exact replica of the Guardian Angels, but mine says Gurian Angels.
That's awesome.
And it's an exact replica of Curtis Lewa's jacket. So they didn't know I was his dentist. I was Curtis Lewa's dentist. And he says it on the radio all the time, so I'm not saying anything I shouldn't say. But they mentioned him in their Broadway show, not knowing that he was a dear friend of mine for like 30 years. So as a surprise, I brought Curtis to the show, and he wore his Guardian Angels jacket, and I wore my Gurian Angels jacket. And Fred Armisen was there from Saturday Night Live, and it was always his dream to meet Curtis Lewa. And we all took pictures together. I have all those pictures. So it just shows you never know what could happen in your life, especially in my life. I never know what could happen. It's always something unusual and strange and fun.
But it's some portion of you taking a few chances along the way, which I love, and sort of putting yourself out there to see where it might get you. And then a lot of luck and coincidence, good, bad, or indifferent, it's this really magical marriage of life and circumstance and things that sort of writes your story. It's not you just playing second fiddle. You're not just the best friend, if you will. You take lead many times.
I had a lot of nerve in those days. I wouldn't be able to do the things that I did today. There was only 3 people I ever wanted to meet when I was a kid: Woody Allen, Salvador Dali, and the Beach Boys. And I met them all. And I just used to know how to make things happen. I don't even know how I did it. If I had a certain goal, I never let anything stop me. Yeah. And that's what allowed me to write the books that I write today about mindset and changing negative thinking to positive thinking. It's so important. We live in a world where we're surrounded by negativity. And positive thinking is so important. It got me through a heart attack, a widowmaker heart attack, where I was back on stage 5 days later. And the owner of the comedy club said to me, "What, are you crazy? You just had a heart attack." I was like, "Yeah, but it's hard to get a spot here. I didn't want to lose my spot." He said, "Only a true comedian would say that."
Yeah, exactly.
And then with COVID, I'm laying there, March of 2020. Well, I'm a trendsetter. I went right out and got COVID. I want to wait.
Yeah.
Double pneumonia, and I'm laying there. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. Luckily, they didn't put me on a ventilator. They were using hydroxychloroquine before they politicized it, and that saved me, and it was a crazy time. And I wind up laying there. They tell me the guy in the bed next to me is from Wuhan, China. I'm like, that can't even happen. That's the kind of stuff that happens to me all the time. So it gave me material for my act.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to survive. And, I told the nurse.
From patient 0.
Yeah, I'm like, can't you move me? There was no place to put me. and so I said to her, I'm a little bit concerned. So she points to a thin curtain between us. She says, "Don't worry, there's a thin curtain." I'm like, too bad Dr. Fauci didn't know about the thin curtain approach. A thin curtain. I'm supposed to feel comfortable that there's a thin curtain hanging between us.
We could all just walked around in our own curtains.
With a thin curtain. Yeah, just between. Yeah. So anyway, things happen to me, but I try to turn them into something comedic, because that's how you think. When you're in the comedy world, everything's funny.
Yeah. Or it makes you cry. So I choose to laugh.
I choose to laugh.
Yeah.
I definitely choose to laugh.
I have a question for you. We're coming to the point where we probably have to start shutting down, but I want to ask you a question because I think you're full of just wonderful knowledge and wonderful advice. There's a lot of young dentists out there nowadays that are struggling. And, they're trying to figure out what their next steps are. They're trying to figure out if they're in the right place. Some of them are even trying to figure out if they're in the right profession. What piece of advice do you have for them? And it doesn't have to be just one thing, but is there anything that you would share with young dentists to kind of make their career a little bit more meaningful or, their life path more sustainable?
No one winds up in dentistry by accident. If you're there at all, it's because you had an interest. You have to love it. It's the kind of field where you really have to love it in order to be good. And I think if anybody went through the ordeal of applying for dental school and then going through the interviews and then being admitted, that you do belong there. It's a very tough field. It's not an easy thing. I loved it. All the years that I was there, first, I consider it an honor anytime someone comes to your office and they trust you with their health. And I try to impart that to the students when I was at NYU. A lot of students come from different cultural backgrounds. A lot of them told me they didn't get hugged as children. You know, my patients very often would hug me, and I would hug them back. Everything is about touch in dentistry, developing a light touch. If you're awkward about touch, it's going to be very hard for you in that field because, as I said, you're holding patients' head in your hands, you know? So I would just tell people, persevere. You know, it's a great field to be in. Aside from all the problems that you face in practice with the insurance and all that kind of stuff, but just, it's an honor to take care of people. And you have to really, really want to do it. It was my dream. It was truly my dream. Aside from comedy, that's why I wound up doing both. I could never leave one to do the other until recent years. But for many, many years, I was doing both simultaneously because I could never make up my mind which I like best. It's you know, it's truly a great honor to be a dentist. You have to work very, very hard to achieve that goal. When I was growing up, people would say, if you couldn't get into medical school, you became a dentist. It was considered a second level thing, you know. When physicians have a toothache, they don't call another physician. They call a dentist, you know. We're amazing at what we do. And especially with all the things that have been invented, you know, when I got out of school, cosmetic dentistry was very new. We were using adaptic. You know, I used to lecture. I was a consultant for a lot of the companies in the early days. And I got to lecture on the early techniques. I put teeth back together again, like front teeth. I would bond back the piece that was missing. I did a lot of very innovative things that were new and exciting to me. These days, there's so many things that I don't even know about. You know, there's always breakthroughs. It's an amazing, exciting career to be in. And you just have to be able to handle the stress. So it's good to have something else like comedy, you know, to like, I think that you have to have a balance in your life. If you spend your whole time just looking in somebody's mouth and you're working in millimeters, I could understand why that could drive you crazy after a while. But you have to develop other areas of your life that you're interested in. It can't only be that. And I think that balance will help you to have a happier life. But being a dentist is a wonderful thing. So I hope that answered something of your question. I don't know.
I think it answered a lot of it, you know, and you know, as we're running out of time, you know, tonight, I just want to thank you for being here. And it's always a pleasure to see you. And I will tell you that I look forward to seeing you on the big stage, opening up some dental conference and throwing some humor in there. But as we close the show tonight, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to take off my dentist hat and I'm going to put on my dad hat for a second because my son watched this show tonight. And I had him watch the show because I told him, I was like, hey, this guy is a comedian, which is what my son wants to be. He's in New York. And you said something tonight that I don't know that you said, but I wrote it down. And I just want to make sure that my son and all the kids out there hear this, because whether you're a dentist, whether you're a comedian, whether you're a janitor, whatever you are, I don't care what you are, but you said something tonight that was very profound. And you said, if I had a goal, I never let anything stop me from achieving it.
Absolutely.
And I will tell you that that's what got me into dental school. That's what got me a job. And you've obviously pursued your goals and you've made a passion out of life that a lot of people haven't. And so I do also want to hone in on you saying that it was an honor to be a dentist, because I truly believe that it is. We have a profession that all kidding aside, we do get to be a clinical and psychological therapist in a number of different ways.
Mhm.
And, you know, we never need to lose sight of that, because, you know, there's so many reasons that people come to us, but there's reasons that they come back to us that are more important than the reasons they initially come to us. So, I hope everybody got something out of tonight. I know that I certainly did. It's always a pleasure to see you. Your zest for life is like no other. And I hope we have you back again, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much, Chad. I just want to say briefly as to what you said. You never know what you say that another person needs to hear. And it's such an interesting thing that something that could seem so simple to you can be helpful to another person. And that's why sharing honestly is such an important thing to do. Because again, you know, you never know, somebody may really need to hear a particular thing, and we're always being guided, you know. And I'm just very grateful to have the opportunity. You guys are amazing, and I'm just very happy that I could be on here with you. So
all right,
anytime,
really quick before he
anytime
goes, where can they find you next?
Oh, well, I listen, I have a big project. I can't tell you the whole thing. Do you guys know do you know who D.L. Hughley is?
Yes.
One of the original kings of comedy. Well, he's going to be producing a project about me, and that's all I can tell you. It's something huge. But I just hosted the Winter Film Awards. I just hosted 2 events for NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They want to do comedy shows for people in hospitals and people in recovery. I'm on the board of Laugh MD, that brings comedy to people who are sick and to people in recovery. It provides them with pre-programmed iPods with comedy on them, because comedy is a healing force.
Absolutely.
And you can check out my website is comedymatterstv.com. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/comedymatterstv. More than 600 videos with Jimmy Fallon and everybody in the comedy world. Amy Poehler, Amy Schumer, even women not named Amy are on there.
There are other women
Other
not
women
named Amy.
Amy. And if anybody wants to contact me, you can have my email is jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com. And all my books, my books are all on Amazon. Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way, Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration, True Stories of People that have overcome amazing obstacles in their lives. My story on stuttering is very minor compared to what these people have overcome. And it's all about, we all get obstacles in our lives, and it's how you handle it that matters. You can either be crushed by them, or you can find the strength to overcome them. And I always admire people who overcome obstacles. So thank you both so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And
always a pleasure.
Soon. Thank you so much.
Always great to see you. And even though dentistry is a great medical profession, I still believe that laughter is the best medicine. So everybody have a wonderful evening.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.